Hello, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD chat. And today we're going to talk about kind of a rough subject. Okay, I've already talked a little bit about just ADHD in general and alcohol and how the incidence of alcoholism is way higher in the ADHD community than in the neurotypical population, and also it's not only higher, but it's not just one of those things. I talked about it already with teenage as regards teenagers, and they're always experimenting with this, that, or the other, trying to prove what adults they are and that sort of thing. But a lot of people who start drinking early and a lot of people who have problems drinking early keep drinking abusively. And so when they're middle-aged, that's when all those things you did as a kid start to catch up with you. And it's not just that your knees hurt or your back's sore or throw it out all the time. With alcoholism, it's your whole development has been disrupted by alcohol abuse, and I've seen a lot of it. There are lots of people out there in the world who have alcohol problems. I majored in, uh, I'm, minored, I guess, technically is what it was, in addiction studies when I was uh, in graduate school. And when I was in the Air Force, I did the drug and alcohol screenings back when we had both, um, for whatever base I was stationed at. So I've had a lot of experience with that. And ADHD compounds the problem and makes it more likely to be an issue. And there's kind of a double thing, ADHD, we all know in the ADHD community that it is not easy for you if you've just got an alcohol problem. I mean, a ADHD problem, all the problems with memory and executive functioning and hyperactivity and all those things are issues that make life a little bit more of a struggle than it is for uh, a neurotypical. And if you compound that with alcoholism on top of it, which you are more likely to do because you're impulsive and it feels good, especially at first. When you first start drinking, it increases your dopamine. And we all know that ADHD is characterized by a dopamine deficit. The problem is that as you continue to drink and you drink abusively, it starts to kill off dopamine. Alcohol starts to kill off dopamine receptors, which are the things in your nervous system that allow the dopamine to make you feel good. So you have fewer receptors, your dopamine production goes down, you feel crummy, but you're also need if you're alcoholic, you need alcohol to feel normal. That's part of the definition. It's like if you go, well, probably the most dangerous thing an alcoholic can do is all of a sudden quit drinking entirely. The possibilities are for really bad outcomes, like dying, uh, are real prominent. So, you know, not enough you've got ADHD, you've also got alcoholism, and you've got, it's a cycle. You're not coping very well anyway. Probably your ADHD was never treated very well or very completely. You probably refuse to to take the medication, and you're in a mess. The combination is not good. It's like, you know explosion. You have a hand grenade with a loose pin. You are more likely to have serious problems. Um, I'm sure most of you out there have heard of Russell Barkley. He's one of the premier researchers on ADHD in the world. Um, he also has a brother who was ADHD and had an alcohol problem as well, and he ended up dying in a car accident. And he had been drinking, and on and on and on. I mean, it's sad, it's tragic, and it just people will sort of allow and kind of not get too excited about a 20-year-old who goes out and gets drunk. But if you're 50, it's a whole different thing. The expectations are that when you're middle-aged, you are stable, established, you have your home's almost paid for, your car is paid for, you have a good job, a good career, da 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 da, stable relationships, all that sort of stuff. If you're alcoholic, it is highly unlikely that you are stable. You will feel, you'll compare yourself to siblings, other people people you grew up with, and you're gonna, oh man, I am not measuring up, and you get all kinds of shame and regrets and all that sort of stuff when you're sober, of course. Okay, and employment. Employment is a huge issue. If you're drinking way too much, it's hard to hold down a job. You can't, like I remember when I first came into the Air Force, I was amazed that you could have beer with lunch at the officers club. They eliminated that fairly quickly, but it was like how common drinking, alcohol consumption, how important it is to certain kinds of groups of people. I mean, the whole action man kind of thing tend to be people who drink a lot. First responders, cops, firemen, fighter pilots tend to drink a lot, and it's part of the role you play when you take on one of these positions, but it costs you a lot. And when you lose control of drinking, then you can't keep a job, and then it doesn't matter how well educated you are, you can't keep a job. You you don't have any money. It's hard, and the money you do have gets spent pretty fast uh, in the saloons and all that stuff. So I mean, and by the time, if you're 40 or 50 years old and you're drinking heavily, you're underemployed, you're not in very, you're going to get in trouble financially, and you're not going to be able to, well, you're not going to be able to sustain yourself, and you're going to, you lose your family, your wife leaves, your husband leaves, your kids don't want to be around you, you embarrass them, that sort of thing. And, oh, by the way, on the other end of the age spectrum, your parents are getting into the age where they could use some assistance, and they like having their kids around and all that sort of thing. You have, um, you've screwed that up, man. You're not going to be able to be of any assistance to your parents when you're constantly on the run for drinking. And treatment is also a huge issue. An alcoholic ADHDer is very difficult to treat because it's hard to get them to engage in the whole program. They don't want to. They don't. Well, first of all, they don't want to give up drinking if they can at all help it, and second of all, they things like medications. You give an alcoholic a level 2 stimulant. I don't know. When I was working in substance abuse, you didn't, no drugs, none at all, nothing. Well, caffeine and nicotine were allowed, but any kind of medication, not given at all. That was back in the old days when we had long-term treatment facilities where you could, stay for a month or that sort of thing. Nowadays, 72 hours and you get discharged with a pocket full of Librium and good luck, which is ridiculous and dangerous, and a lot more people die because of that. So alcoholic ADHDers tend to not want to be good patients. They've tried some things, it didn't work out very well. Maybe they were never really treated for their ADHD. So that is, well, that's a huge issue. Then you've got all the shame and uh, hypersensitivity to rejection, and it just becomes a mess. And then I already talked about medication, and that's a huge thing. And then the best of alcohol treatments depend on a whole bunch of other factors to allow somebody to stay sober. Relapse is high. It's probably higher if you have ADHD in addition to an alcohol problem. Uh, you you are cynical and you are bitter, and uh, you're not sure anything's going to work. You have made a lot of folks at a certain stage have given up. There's no way I'll never get fixed. So real, I mean, for any alcoholic, relapse is a huge problem. Uh, it's it becomes. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever, I'm sure we've all dieted, but that sort of thing. But if trying to give something up for the rest of your life is huge. Um, I'm not sure I could give up peanut butter for the rest of my life. Alcohol has become a multi-purpose emollient for most of these people, and uh, it's everything. I mean, the world of an alcoholic gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it's only the drinking and do I have enough to make it through the day. Uh, so relapse is a huge issue. You've got to establish a structure, and the alcoholic has got to buy into the structure. You've got to, do what do? I get up, I exercise, I journal, I meditate, I eat a healthy breakfast. I, you have these patterns that you've got to set up. And ideally, you set everything up so consistently and so frequently that they become habits. Sort of like brushing your teeth. You don't think about doing that anymore. You just do it at the appropriate times of day. That's what has to happen with an alcoholic and with the tools of sobriety, if you will. Attending meetings, attending psychotherapy, and or coaching, or both. Actually, some people need both at the same time, and you have to establish it and do it frequently enough that it is a just part of your day. It's what you all it's you do it, that's just the way it is. You do it. And part of what you need is the support of a therapeutic community. And part of that is, I mean, that's why AA is still around and still being used regularly. Um, and it's over 100 years old. I mean, it's 1930 or so is when it started. And, but then you also need to be looking at, you are not likely to have made it to middle age with an alcohol problem and ADHD without a number of other issues like depression, like anxiety, uh, some paranoia, those sorts of things. And that's why you also need to be looking at uh, s- some kind of treatments, ADHD, psychotherapy, coaching. Those issues are major, and or those treatments are major. Then they need, you frequently need them. Um, your typical alcoholic ADHDer is probably not going to be easy to get with. So you've got to have therapists and coaches that are familiar, and a lot of the coach parts of things are people who've been through it themselves, so they know how tough it is, and they are tend to be more sympathetic. The part of what you've got to work on too is, you're 40, 50, maybe even a little older, and your life is not where you expected it to be, or not where everybody else expects it to be. And so there's a lot of self-worth issues, um, and low self-esteem in general. It's and that's part of the. I mean, that's a lot of the focus of ADHD coaching, and a lot of the focus of substance abuse therapies. You are trying to build up somebody's self-esteem. They try to get them to so that they, don't give up, because giving up is, well, it's not pretty anyway. And so they have to be willing. Well, they have to be willing. They have to be encouraged, and they have to take, the notion that they can change some of this. And so they need people around them that are supportive, and I mean, alcoholics by themselves, they blow through families like crazy. I mean, it just, I know you live with this for years and years and years, and it never seems to change. It's always the same, and so you've got to, but you need, if you're going to get a control, that's what we're not talking cure, we're talking control here. You've got to have some support somewhere, a family's support. I mean, I think a large part of what AA does is gives people support, and that's what you need. We're all social animals, and we need to think that there are people who care about us and care about how we're doing, and that's why support is so important, and it gets tricky after 30 or 40 years of abusive drinking, because you've probably blown through a lot of relationships, and uh, you know sometimes, well, there are a lot of things that people do when they need a drink bad, and so it's a tricky deal. And like I said, coaching is real important. Um, Social support is real important. And given cases, therapy is important, but you've got to have something. Okay. And so it's not easy. And it's not likely to fall out of the sky. You got to work for it, and you got to have people with you working for it. So um, I'm one of those people who has done a lot of work with ADHD, and a lot of work with substance abuse. Um, and if you are interested in getting some treatment, you have somebody in your family or you yourself have some issues that you think need some work, um, uh, get in touch with me at my website, terrygingrassphd.com. We'll have a freebie session and see what, if anything, we can do for you. That didn't sound very powerful, didn't it? I'm not a salesman, okay, and I don't intend to ever be one. But you have to at least put the word out there. I mean, it's one of those issues that really gets to me a lot. You know, and so thank you for tuning in. And like I said, you want to get in touch with me, terrygingrassphd.com. I've got one of those fancy Calendly things that I barely know how to use, and you can sign up for a session, and we will see if we can work something out together. Okay, I will catch you next week, and maybe it'll be a little more fun than this session has been. Um, most of us probably have somebody in our family system who's had a significant drug or alcohol problem. The percentage of people that are abusing those sorts of things, and the potency of some of the newer drugs, particularly, uh, just lend that to happening. So you got problems, you got somebody who's got them, give me a call and we will see what we can work out. Okay, catch you later.